Well, we have a breaking story here thanks to Jake Tapper, the finest journalist in Washington, D.C. Just ask him. He'll tell you. He's very serious, by the way, when he delivers this news. He even furrows his brow, but he's not wearing his smart guy glasses, which makes me nervous. Let's see what happens. Oh, by the way, this news that he's breaking is news that you heard here from us over a year ago. And when we delivered it to you, we were called right-wing propagandists who were dwelling in cheap, fake stuff. It was people like Jake Tapper who called us that. Also, Jake Tapper is delivering the news for you now because he's put all of this information into a book that he wants you to buy. Wow, it's great to be a journalist like Jake Tapper. Take it away, Jake.
You have an entire White House press corps, though, following him around. And I'm just curious as to whether or not this kind of trying to hide what was happening with the president at the time had an impact on the press corps. Like, why didn't we hear some of these details from what they actually saw and were dealing with trying to get information?
Well, Alex Thompson and I were on the case, as were lots of other reporters, trying to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. But the bottom line is the White House was lying, not only to the press, not only to the public, but they were lying to members of their own cabinet. They were lying to White House staffers. They were lying to Democratic members of Congress, to donors about how bad things had gotten. And in fact, Alex and I started writing this book after the election of 2024. And we spoke with more than 200 people, most of whom, almost all of whom were Democrats, and almost all of whom wouldn't be honest with us or wouldn't be candid with us until after the election. And then after the election, we found out all of these things that when you looked at what was going on with President Biden at the time, it probably doesn't surprise you the extent to which he was deteriorating. But now we have anecdotes and facts about what was really going on behind the scenes with details that Democrats wouldn't share with us until after Election Day.
What an odious lying hack. And he's the worst of the worst because he pretends like he doesn't have any sort of dog in the fight, that he's not political, he doesn't have an opinion. He's just one of the last of a good breed of journalists who just deliver the facts. And that makes him actually the worst of them all because he still treats you like you're a moron, that you can't actually see exactly what a hack he is, what a propagandist he is. Let's break this down a little bit at a time, shall we?
You have an entire White House press corps, though, following him around. And I'm just curious as to whether or not this kind of trying to hide what was happening with the president at the time had an impact on the press corps. Like, why didn't we hear some of these details from what they actually saw and were dealing with trying to get information?
What had an impact on the press corps? Let me ask the question another way. We all saw this with our own eyes. He was barely able to function during the 2020 campaign, but he was protected by his campaign staff, kept in the basement under the guise of pandemic. He's been bumbling, he's been fumbling, he's been stumbling. He can't get up the stairs of Air Force One. He can't keep a clear train of thought. And you all said it was a stutter. And now you've got reporters who were right there in the press room every single day, seeing it with their own eyes. Aren't they guilty of covering this story up too, Jake? What's the point of having a White House press corps if they can't actually report on what's obvious to the rest of us? And by the way, Jake, while we're at it, there have been a lot of commentators in non-traditional media, right of center new media, who have been talking about this for years, and you dismissed them, or worse, called them liars. Aren't you part of the problem, Jake? That's how I asked the question. But you see, Jake's got his furrowed brow here, and he's very serious, so he's going to give you a very serious answer to that nonsense of a question.
Well, Alex Thompson and I were on the case, as were lots of other reporters.
Alex Thompson, the reporter from Axios, who's writing the book with him for money. They're making bucks off of this. I'd love to know what the advance was. They were on the case, really? Can you show, because here's the thing, Jake, you've got a TV show. So can you show us the segment you did prior to the infamous CNN debate in late June of 2024? Can you show it? Why don't you just show us one of the segments you did on Biden's decline? What do you mean you were on the case? They were on the case after Biden dropped out. He'll concede that in a second.
Reporters trying to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. But the bottom line is the White House was lying, not only to the press, not only to the public, but they were lying to members of their own cabinet.
All right, let me just pause there for a second. I don't, again, I'm just a commentator, analyst, talk show host, do this show for you, and I love doing it. I didn't go to journalism school, okay? But I read all of the bullshit. Oh, I didn't bleep myself. I read all the bullshit they say about themselves. And they're the ones who say that they're so essential. Our Constitution would be shredded and burned in a pile of rubble on the National Mall if it weren't for the White House press corps. Didn't you hear all the things they said about themselves at their big fancy dinner they just threw the other day? And they approach each day assuming that the White House is lying to them. They don't take the official line from the White House. No, they dig deeper. They get sources. They find out the truth. That's the whole point. Otherwise, if you just accepted what the White House said as fact, you don't need a White House press corps. You don't need a First Amendment or freedom of the speech. You don't need reporters. If we're just going to accept what the White House tells us, then we can just receive their press releases every day and we're done. But Jake Tapper sits here and stares at you and says, they lied to us. They lied to us about Joe Biden's health. They told us he was healthy. I'll be honest with you, Jake. I'm not angry at the White House for lying to you. I'm angry at you for believing it, for your credulity during the entire affair and never once challenging the official line. Because, Jake, see, I've seen you in action, pal, and I know you can challenge people if you don't like what they're telling you. But those people you challenge, they always seem to be conservatives or Republicans or people from the Trump administration. But, boy, you are en fuego when you want to challenge them. The White House lied. Can't blame us. We took what they told us. We repeated it. We regurgitated it. We printed it. We published it. We won awards for it. And if anybody over there in the right-wing new media, if they ever challenged it, we called them lying hacks and propagandists. But you can't blame us because ultimately it's because the White House lied. And they're getting away with this. And he's making money selling his book on it.
They were lying to White House staffers. They were lying to Democratic members of Congress, to donors about how bad things had gotten. And in fact, Alex and I started writing this book after the election.
There it is. After the election, we started writing the book. Anybody can write this book after the election, Jake. Maybe you should have been reporting this before the election. Also, I'd love to, God, Jake, please come on this show. I'll be polite at the beginning. Because here's a great follow-up. So interesting, Jake. So you're telling me the Biden administration lied to everyone. They lied to you. They lied to the reporters. They lied to their own staff. They lied to the cabinet members. They lied and they lied. This is the same administration that said that there was no inflation problem. This is the same administration that said that the border was secure. This is the same administration that said January 6th was an insurrection. This is the same administration that said that the COVID shot was perfectly safe. This is the same administration that said that Trump was a criminal and a felon and he should be put in jail. Yet, hey, this is the same administration that said that there was a reasonable reason why the FBI should raid Mar-a-Lago at 6 a.m. because this is the same administration that said Donald Trump was taking state secrets and selling them to Saudi Arabia. This is the same administration that said a whole lot of crap, Jake. So if they lied about this and you're conceding right now that they lied about this, maybe we should revisit all of that other crap they said. And by the way, all of those lies that I just detailed for you, just off the top of my head, they were all not only believed and repeated as gospel truth by Jake and the pals in the media, but every other Democrat elected official in this country. So maybe we should stop believing all their lies until just one of them steps forward and said, yeah, this was bad. We lied and we got to get fixed. Otherwise, we'll never win another election because they don't deserve to win another election. Of course, if Jake Tapper were paying attention like we were during the Biden presidency, we would have picked up on little clues now and again, like from this woman who's now a primetime host for MSNBC, because journalism.
What more can you tell us about the president's health regime? We hear he's lifting weights. What sort of weights is he lifting? Does he have a personal trainer? And what happened to his Peloton bike? Did he bring it to the White House?
I didn't know where this was going, but I'm intrigued by it. I will say I have nothing to read out on the president's private exercise regime, but I can tell you, having traveled with him a fair amount, sometimes he's hard to keep up with.
There you go. She's now a primetime journalist on MSNBC, and you know she's going to tell you the truth because, well, just look at her track record. By the way, I think my favorite part of this is the expression on the reporter sitting in the row in front of the guy asking the question. Watch her face as he lays into his weightlifting regimen and the Peloton bike that he rides on. Even she knows that it's all bullshit.
What more can you tell us about the president's health regime? We hear he's lifting weights. What sort of weights is he lifting? Does he have a personal trainer? And what happened to his Peloton bike? Did he bring it to the White House?
You see that expression? Do you see her face? She knows. So where is she? Where's she writing the story? Where is she saying nobody believes this crap? They all wanted to believe this crap. See, here's the problem. All of those lies that I laid out there, they had to be told, and they had to be repeated, and they had to be published and reported, because otherwise Trump would succeed. What they didn't realize was we have a new media regime now, and you're going to get the truth. You're going to get the facts, and Trump will win even bigger because you've lied. Nick Aram over at Red State has a breakdown on some of the other things that this book reveals. Conversations reveal the White House's determination to conceal the reality of Biden's condition at the risk of his own health while he faced a tough re-election bid against Trump. Biden's physical deterioration, most apparent in his halting walk, had become so severe that there were internal discussions about putting the president in a wheelchair, but they couldn't do so until after the election. Biden might need a wheelchair, but God forbid we do that for him now because he might lose the election. So let's just risk it. Risking the president's health, by the way, for political purposes. Given Biden's age, his physician, Kevin O'Connor, no relation, also privately said that if he had another bad fall, a wheelchair might be necessary for what could be a difficult recovery. They tried to figure out shorter walking paths, began insisting on handrails for steps up to the stage at his appearances, had him wear sneakers more often, changed his visual briefings before events, ensured he knew every step he was expected to take, and guided him more carefully through the movements. Also in the book, Biden, his family, and senior White House officials pushed forward with the president's re-election campaign despite seeing signs of physical and mental decline over the course of his administration. Also, yes, there were physical changes as he got older, but evidence of aging is not evidence of mental incapacity. That's what the White House claimed at the time, Biden's spokesperson. So far, the statement continued, we are still waiting for anyone to point out where Joe Biden had to make a presidential decision or make a presidential address where he was unable to do his job because of mental decline. In fact, the evidence points to the opposite. He was a very effective presidency. But here's the problem. We now know that almost every single major document he signed while he was president, he used the auto pen, or I should say somebody used the auto pen. So I don't think it should be incumbent on us, we the people, to demonstrate the moments behind the scenes that we're not allowed to see where he was incapable of doing his job. I think, maybe I'm naive, it's incumbent on the people who are working for the administration behind the scenes to reveal that the president is incompetent, because that's literally their duty. Stephen Miller, not the one who works in the White House, but the one who writes on the media, pulled out that thing about the shorter walking paths, the handrails, the sneakers. He says, I don't understand why they needed to do all this for a simple speech impediment. That's right. Remember, he just had a lifelong stutter, guys. What's wrong with you? Boy, if only we had some journalists back then at the time who actually looked at this with a critical eye. You know, someone who's like a stalwart champion of journalistic ethics, who doesn't have any political bias, who just follows the facts no matter where they lead him. You know, someone like Jake Tapper. Well, how was Jake Tapper? back in 2020 when the rest of us all saw that Biden was incompetent?
I think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that.
It's very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable.
You have
to watch somebody on stage
I can't.
search for
That's so
questions
amazing. It's so amazing to me
and
that
try and figure out an answer.
a cognitive decline. President Biden embraces his stutter, talking about it, while Trump mocks it, exaggerates it, belittles it. He's sharp physically. I mean, mentally. Yeah. I think the question is physically, right?
Right.
More so?
Right.
Right. And the guy who's his chief opponent is only 3 or 4 years younger than him.
Exactly.
I mean, you have questioned President Biden's age, mental fitness, ability to lead. Of those supporting Biden, you said, quote, "Shame on all of you pretending everything is okay. You're leading us and him into a disaster." Do you worry that you damaged him at all? I don't doubt that you got hugs and handshakes behind closed doors today, and maybe even publicly, some of them because they like you personally. But I've heard a lot of really nasty stuff about you from your Democratic colleagues. Sure. I mean, just like, what is he thinking? Exercise in narcissism. I mean, false claims to the Wall Street Journal about President Biden's mental fitness and acuity. He's 81, and his memory, it doesn't seem great. It's not horrible, but I don't understand the outrage. Quote, "Behind closed doors, Biden shows signs of slipping," unquote. The Wall Street Journal is owned by News Corp, which is run by the Murdochs. Beyond the headline, there is some critical nuance here. The article is mostly based on observations of Republicans, with former Speaker Kevin McCarthy the only one going on the record. They do note in the article that most of the criticism comes from Republicans. Have you heard any concerns from anyone who has met with President Biden about him seeming a little slower?
No.
The Russians are trying to make us and the public not trust our election integrity. Joe Biden has dementia, all this stuff.
Yeah. And now he's got a book and he wants you to buy it. Good look back there on how Jake Tapper covered the president's health I'm sorry. I messed that up. That's a good look back on how Jake Tapper covered up Joe Biden's health. But now, buy his book. I mean, his kid's going to be going to college soon. Got to make sure we pick up that tuition. By the way, his co-author there is a reporter who literally just won an award from the White House Correspondents Association for covering Biden's health. He's at Axios. Here's how Axios covered it. Right after the debate, when Biden was a disaster and they couldn't cover up for him anymore, Biden has a cold. He has a cold, according to a person close to the president. It was confirmed to Axios. So there you go. We have confirmation that Biden just had a cold. That's all that happened during the debate. That's Axios. CBS News, he had a cold. He just had a cold during the debate. NBC News, Biden had a cold. That's what's really going on here. Biden just had a cold. NBC News, Biden had a cold. Meanwhile, Chris Cillizza, who now does a podcast on Substack, he spoke truth to power, in this case to the reporters and journalists who got this story wrong. Here's the only problem. Chris Cillizza, at the time, worked for CNN. And, of course, he covered up, too. But now that he's fired by CNN, wow, it's time to come clean.
If you think Donald Trump isn't saying enough about his medical past and his medical present, then you can't look at what Joe Biden and his staff did and say it's okay. It's not okay. It is not okay. This was wrong, was and is wrong. And I think in order for Democrats to move forward, there needs to be an accounting of this. And I would say if you're a Democrat who wants to run in 2028, you need to say, look, based on what I know now, okay, you don't have to say based on what I knew then. You can say I never saw Joe Biden in this situation. But based on what I know now, he should not have run again. And we should have known much more about his deterioration while he was in office. It was irresponsible of his staff to do what they did.
Hey, listen, guys, hacks are going to hack. And Chris Cillizza is a hack. And now that he's not getting paid by CNN, he doesn't have to be part of the narrative. But I assure you, if he gets picked up by a big major corporation again to do media, he'll go right back into, well, following the lie as long as it supports the company that's paying him. Let me just amend what he just said here because there's some truth to it. The first Democrat who steps forward and announces, number one, that Joe Biden was a disaster and that their party is suffering because they covered it up. And number two, Kamala Harris and the entire events that transpired with her becoming the nominee is also a disaster, or was a disaster. That person is going to shoot to the lead for the presidency for them, but it's not good enough. I'm sorry. It's not good enough to say, knowing now what I know, I can say this. No, because we all knew it. If you're a Democrat and you want to be president and you're going to sit in front of the American people and say, I thought he was fine, but now all of this has been revealed and I'm shocked, I tell you, that Biden couldn't be president. If you're really going to say that, then we know that you're either a liar or you have no brain in your head because you didn't see the reality that we all saw. And if that's the case, I don't think you should be president. And neither do any of the rest of us.